I never thought a single moment could unravel everything I'd built. Everything I'd believed about family, loyalty, and myself. It was a Sunday dinner. One of those gatherings my mother insisted on, where we all squeezed around her mahogany table, pretending to be the perfect family. The clink of silverware, the hum of four small talkit was all so familiar, so suffocatingly routine. My sister-in-law, Claire, sat across from me, her perfectly manicured nails tapping the table, her smile sharp as a blade. I should have known something was brewing. Her eyes had been too bright all evening, her laughter too sharp, like she was waiting for the right moment to strike. I'd always been the peacemaker, the one who smoothed over Mom's critiques, Dad's silences, and my brother Tom's temper. Claire, though, she was different. She'd married into our family 5 years ago, all charm and grace. But there was always something beneath it, something I couldn't name until that night. She'd never liked me. Not really. I felt it in the way her compliments always carried a barb, the way she'd glance at Tom when I spoke, like I was an intruder in their perfect little world. I told myself it was just her way, that I was reading too much into it. But that night, I learned how wrong I'd been. We were halfway through dessert Mom's overbaked apple pie when Claire leaned forward, her wine glass dangling in her hand. "You know, Sarah," she said, her voice cutting through the chatter. "You've always been so self-righteous, acting like you're above us all." The room went quiet. Mom's fork froze midair. Dad stared at his plate. Tom, my own brother, just looked at Claire with this strange, blank expression. I laughed, thinking it was a joke, but her eyes locked on mine, and I saw it pure venom. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice shakier than I wanted. She stood, her chair scraping the floor. "You think you're so perfect, don't you? The golden child. Always so helpful. So good. But I know the truth." Her words were a whip, each one lashing harder. I felt my face flush, my heart pounding as everyone stared. "Claire, sit down," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But she didn't. She leaned closer, her face inches from mine. And then God, I'll never forget it, spat. Right in my face. The wet shock of it hit my cheek, my lips, and I froze, too stunned to move. The room was silent. A deafening, suffocating silence. Mom's mouth hung open. Dad's hands clenched. Tom just sat there, his eyes on the table, like he hadn't seen a thing. I wiped my face with a trembling hand, the humiliation burning hotter than any anger. "Why?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Claire smirked, leaning back in her chair like she'd won something. "You'll find out," she said. "You'll all find out." And then she tossed a folded piece of paper onto the table, right in front of me. It was old, creased, the edges yellowed like it had been hidden away for years. My hands shook as I unfolded it, and when I read the words scrawled in my own handwriting, my blood ran cold. It was a letter I'd written a decade ago, a letter I'd buried deep, a letter that could destroy everything. I don't know how she got it. I don't know how she knew. But as I sat there, the weight of that paper in my hands, I realized this wasn't just about Claire's hatred. This was about something bigger, something older, something I tried to outrun for years. The letter was from a time when I was young and desperate, when I'd done something I swore I'd never speak of again. It was a confession, a plea, A mistake I thought was buried with the person I'd been back then. But Claire had dug it up, and now she was wielding it like a weapon. I looked around the table, at the faces of my family, and saw something worse than shocked out. Mom's eyes were wide, searching mine for answers. Dad's jaw was tight, like he was holding back words he didn't dare say. And Tom, my brother, my protector, just stared at Claire like she was the only one in the room. I felt like I was drowning, like the air had been sucked out of the house. "What is this?" Mom finally asked, her voice trembling. I couldn't speak. I couldn't explain. Not yet. Claire leaned forward again, her voice low and dangerous. "Read it," she said. "Read it out loud. Sarah. Let them know who you really are." My hands shook so hard the paper rattled. I wanted to tear it up, to burn it, to make it disappear. But I knew I couldn't. Not with everyone watching. Not with Claire's eyes boring into me. Not with the truth sitting there like a ticking bomb. I took a breath, my voice barely a whisper, and started to read. The words were like knives, each one cutting deeper into the fragile bonds we'd all clung to. The letter was addressed to someone named Emma, someone I hadn't thought of in years, someone I'd hurt in ways I could never undo. It was a confession of betrayal, of lies I'd told to save myself, of choices I'd made that had shattered her life. As I read, I felt the weight of every eye on me, the judgment, the betrayal. Mom's hand went to her mouth. Dad's chair creaked as he shifted. Tom finally looked at me, and I saw something break in his eyes. When I finished, the silence was worse than before. Claire sat back, triumphant, her smile cold and sharp. "That's who you are, Sarah," she said. "A liar. A coward." I wanted to scream, to tell her she didn't know the whole story, that she couldn't possibly understand. But the words wouldn't come. All I could do was sit there, the letter crumpled in my hands, my face still wet with her spit, and wonder how I'd let it come to this. The dining room felt like a battlefield after Claire's attack, the air thick with unspoken accusations. I sat there, the letter still clutched in my hands, its words echoing in my head like a guilty verdict. My family's eyes were on me, but I couldn't meet them. Not Mom's, wide with disbelief, or Dad's, narrowed with something I couldn't name: disappointment. Maybe. Or worse, disgust. Tom, my brother, was the hardest to face. He'd always been my rock, the one who defended me when we were kids, who'd laughed off my mistakes and told me I was better than them. But now, he just stared at the table, his hands knotted together, like he didn't know me anymore. Claire, though, she was reveling in it. She leaned back in her chair, sipping her wine like she'd just won a war. I wanted to lunge across the table, to shake her, to demand how she'd found that letter, why she'd chosen this moment to tear me apart. But I was frozen, trapped in the weight of my own shame. The letter wasn't just words, it was proof of a time when I'd been someone else. Someone desperate and selfish. Someone who'd hurt people to protect herself. I'd spent years burying that girl, building a new life, a new me. But Claire had ripped it all open, and now I was bleeding in front of everyone I loved. Mom broke the silence first, her voice small and trembling. "Sarah, is it true? Did you do those things?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. How could I explain? How could I make them understand the context? The fear, The desperation that had driven me all those years ago. Emma had been my best friend in college. My confidant. My sister in all but blood. But I'd betrayed her. Lied to cover my own mistakes. And it had cost her everything: her reputation. Her dreams. Her trust. I'd written that letter to beg for forgiveness. But I'd never sent it. I couldn't face her. I'd buried it instead, thinking it would stay buried forever. I was young. I finally said, my voice hoarse. I was scared. I didn't mean to hurt her. It sounded weak, even to me. Claire snorted, rolling her eyes. Didn't mean to. Oh, please. Sarah. You ruined her life. You don't get to play the victim now. Her words stung. Not just because they were cruel, but because they were true. I had ruined Emma's life. And I'd spent every day since trying to make up for it. Trying to be better. To be someone who deserved the love of this family. But now, with that letter laid bare, I felt like I was back in that dorm room, making the worst choice of my life. Dad spoke next, his voice low and gruff. How did you get that letter, Claire? It was the question I'd been too afraid to ask. Claire's smile faltered, just for a second, and I saw something flicker in her eyes, something like fear. Does it matter? She said, shrugging. What matters is the truth. Sarah's been lying to all of you for years. Tom finally looked up, his gaze shifting to Claire. How? Claire. He pressed, his voice sharper than I'd expected. Where did you find it? She hesitated. And in that moment, I realized she wasn't as untouchable as she seemed. I found it in Sarah's old college box, she said, her tone defensive. When we were cleaning out the attic last summer, it was just sitting there, waiting to be found. I felt a chill run through me. That box. I'd forgotten about it. Tucked away in Mom and Dad's attic, filled with old notebooks, photos, and that damned letter. I'd meant to destroy it. But life got in the way. Work. Moving. Trying to keep up with this family's expectations. And now, Claire had used it to gut me. Why didn't you tell me? Tom asked, his voice quieter now. But there was an edge to it, like he was holding something back. Claire's eyes narrowed. Because you'd have protected her. Like you always do. You're so blind when it comes to Sarah. There it was, the resentment I'd always sensed but never fully understood. Claire didn't just dislike me. She hated the bond one had with Tom. The way he'd always stood up for me. This wasn't just about the letter. This was personal. I stood, my chair scraping the floor, mirroring Claire's earlier move. You had no right, I said, my voice shaking but growing stronger. You had no right to dig through my things, to use my past against me. Claire laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. No right. You don't get to talk about rights, Sarah. Not after what you did to Emma. The name hit like a punch, and I flinched. Mom reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Too raw, too exposed. I'm not that person anymore, I said, looking at each of them. Mom, Dad, Tom. I've spent years trying to make things right, trying to be better. I didn't send that letter because I couldn't face her, but I've carried it every day. I've tried to make amends in my own way. Claire rolled her eyes again, but Tom's expression softened. Just a fraction. What do you mean? Make amends? He asked. I took a breath, knowing this was my chance to explain. to claw my way back from the edge. I've been volunteering, I said, at a women's shelter. I've been helping people like Emma, people who've been hurt, who've lost everything. I can't undo what I did, but I've been trying to make it mean something. The words felt inadequate, but they were true. I'd spent years pouring my guilt into helping others, hoping it would balance the scales. Claire scoffed, but Mom's eyes were wet now, her hand reaching for mine again. Why didn't you tell us? She asked. I shook my head, my throat tight. Because I was ashamed. Because I didn't want you to see that part of me. The room was quiet again. But this time, it felt different, not accusing, but heavy with the weight of truth. Claire's smile was gone, and for the first time, she looked uncertain. But I wasn't done. Not yet. If Claire wanted to play dirty, I'd play too. I just needed to figure out how. The silence in the dining room was a living thing, coiling around us, tightening with every second. I could still feel the dampness on my cheek where Claire had spat, a cold reminder of her rage, her need to tear me down. But something shifted in me as I stood there, the crumpled letter in my hand, my family's eyes on me. I wasn't just the villain in Claire's story. I wasn't just the girl who'd made a terrible mistake all those years ago. I was Sarah, their daughter, their sister, and I wasn't going to let her rewrite my life. Not without a fight. I looked at Claire, her smugness faltering under the weight of my stare. You think you know everything, I said, my voice low but steady now. You think you can drag out my past and make me small. But you don't know me. You don't know what I've carried, what I've done to make it right. Her lips parted, but no words came out. For the first time, she looked caught, like a predator who'd misjudged her prey. Tom leaned forward, his voice cutting through the tension. Claire, why didn't you tell me you found that letter? Why go through all this? His tone wasn't angry. Not yet. But there was a crack in it. A fracture in the blind loyalty I'd always envied. Claire's eyes flicked to him, then back to me. And I saw it again, that flicker of fear. She'd planned this moment, orchestrated it to humiliate me. But she hadn't counted on Tom questioning her. I was protecting you, she said, her voice softer now, almost pleading. She's been lying to you, Tom. To all of you. I couldn't let her keep pretending she's something she's not. It was a good act. I'd give her that. The devoted wife, shielding her husband from his deceitful sister. But I wasn't buying it. And neither was Tom. His jaw tightened, and he shook his head. You should have told me, he said. We don't do this, Claire. We don't ambush each other. Mom's voice broke in, fragile but firm. Sarah, tell us about Emma. Tell us what happened. It wasn't a question, it was a plea. A desperate need to understand how her daughter could have done something so wrong. I took a deep breath, knowing I couldn't hide anymore. The letter had exposed me, but maybe the truth could save me. Emma was my best friend. I started, my voice trembling but clear. We were in college. Inseparable. She was brilliant, studying to be a journalist, always chasing the truth. But I got in over my head. I paused, the memories flooding back, late nights. Bad decisions. A boy who didn't deserve either of us. There was this guy, Mark. I liked him, but he liked Emma. I was jealous, stupidly jealous. And when he started flirting with me, I didn't stop him. I let it happen, Mom's hand tightened around her napkin. But she didn't interrupt. I kept going, the words spilling out like a confession I'd held back too long. Emma found out. And she was hurt. But she forgave me. She always forgave me. But then, there was a story she was working on. An exposé about a professor. It was big. Dangerous even. And she trusted me to help her with the research. I was supposed to keep it secret. But I didn't. I told Mark. Thinking it would impress him. Thinking he'd choose me. He didn't. He told the professor. And Emma's story fell apart. She got expelled for ethics violations. And her career was over before it started. The room was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking in the hall. Dad's face was unreadable, but his hands were clenched so tight his knuckles were white. Tom looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Claire. Though. She was smiling again. A small, triumphant curve of her lips. And you just walked away, she said. You let her take the fall. I didn't walk away. I snapped, my voice rising. I tried to fix it. I went to the dean. I begged them to reconsider. But it was too late. Emma wouldn't speak to me. She left school. Left town. And I never heard from her again. That letter, I held it up. My hand shaking, was me trying to apologize. To explain. But I couldn't send it. I was too ashamed. Mom's eyes were wet. Her voice barely a whisper. Why didn't you tell us? Sarah. We could have helped you. I shook my head. My throat tight. Because I didn't want you to know I'd failed. I didn't want you to see me like that. Dad finally spoke. His voice gruff, but steady. You should have trusted us. I wanted to cry. To scream. To run from the room and never come back. But I stayed. Because running was what the old Sarah would have done. The new Sarah. The one I'd been building for years. Face things head on. I know. I said. I should have. But I didn't. And I've been trying to make it right ever since. Claire laughed. A harsh, grating sound. Make it right. You think volunteering at some shelter erases what you did. You're still the same selfish girl who threw her friend under the bus. Her words were meant to cut. But they didn't land the way she wanted. I saw Tom flinch. Saw Mom's eyes narrow. Claire was losing her grip. And I realized something: she wasn't as innocent as she seemed. Nobody digs up a letter like that without a reason. Enough, I said, my voice steady now. You want to talk about truth? Claire, let's talk about why you really did this. What are you hiding? Her smile vanished. And for a split second, I saw panic in her eyes. I didn't know what I was reaching for. Not yet. But I knew there was something. Something she didn't want us to see. And I was going to find it. The dining room felt like it was shrinking. The walls closing in as my words hung in the air. Claire's face froze. Her eyes darting to Tom. Then back to me. Like a cornered animal searching for an escape. I'd struck something. A nerve I didn't even know was there. And the power of it surged through me. For the first time that night, I wasn't just defending myself, I was pushing back. What are you talking about? Claire said, her voice sharp but unsteady, like a blade that had lost its edge. I didn't have proof. Not yet. But I'd seen that look in her eyes. That flicker of guilt. She wasn't just out to humiliate me. This was about protecting something. Hiding something. I leaned forward. My hands flat on the table. The crumpled letter still between my fingers. You didn't just stumble across that letter. Claire. You went looking for it. Why? What's in it for you? Tom turned to her. His brow furrowed. Claire. Answer her. His voice was low, but there was a weight to it. A demand she couldn't ignore. Mom and Dad were watching now. Their earlier shock giving way to something else, curiosity. Maybe. Or suspicion. Claire laughed. But it was forced. Brittle. You're paranoid. Sarah. I found it. That's all. You're just trying to turn this around on me because you can't face what you did. But I wasn't backing down. No. I said. My voice steady. Almost calm. You've been waiting for this moment. You planned it. The way you brought it out. The way you waited until everyone was here to make sure it hurt the most. That's not an accident. That's revenge. The word landed like a stone. And I saw Mom flinch. Dad's jaw tighten. Tom's eyes stayed on Claire, searching her face for something I couldn't see. Revenge. Claire said, her voice rising. You think I need revenge? You're the one who's been lying to this family for years. But her hands were shaking now. Just enough for me to notice. And I knew I was right. This wasn't just about me. This was about her. About something she was desperate to keep buried. I just had to figure out what. Mom spoke up. Her voice soft but firm. Claire, if you have something to say, say it. We're a family. We don't do this to each other. Her words were meant for Claire. But they cut me too. I hadn't been honest with them. Hadn't trusted them with my past. And now here we were, tearing each other apart. Dad nodded, his eyes on Claire. Out with it, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Claire's composure cracked, just for a moment. She looked at Tom, her eyes pleading. But he didn't move. Didn't reach for her hand like he usually did. Fine, she said, her voice tight. You want to know why I did it? Because I'm tired of living in her shadow. She pointed at me, her finger trembling. Sarah, the perfect daughter, the perfect sister. Tom talks about you like you're some saint. And I'm just the wife who's never good enough. The room went still. Tom's face fell, like her words had hit him somewhere deep. Claire, that's not true, he said, but there was doubt in his voice, a hesitation that hadn't been there before. I felt a pang of guilt, not for what I'd done to Emma, but for the way my bond with Tom had made Claire feel. I'd never meant to make her feel less, but I could see it now, the resentment that had been simmering for years, waiting for a spark. That's no excuse, I said, my voice softer than I expected. You didn't have to do this. You could have talked to me. To Tom. You didn't have to hurt me to feel better about yourself. Claire's eyes flashed. And for a moment, I thought she might spit again. But instead, she laughed. A cold, bitter sound. You don't get it, do you? This isn't about feeling better. It's about making things right. You don't deserve their love, Sarah. Not after what you did. Her words stung, but they also lit something inside me, a determination I hadn't felt in years. Maybe I don't, I said, meeting her gaze. But neither do you. Not like this. I turned to Tom, my heart pounding. Tom, I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. Big ones. But I've spent years trying to make up for them. I didn't tell you because I was afraid you'd look at me the way you're looking at me now. But I'm not hiding anymore. Tom's eyes softened. Just a fraction. And I felt a flicker of hope. But Claire wasn't done. You think you can just talk your way out of this? She said, her voice rising again. You think a few pretty words will make them forget what you did to Emma? She turned to Mom and Dad. Her face flushed with anger. She's a liar. She's been lying to you all this time. And you're just going to let her spin this. Dad stood, his chair scraping the floor, and the sound silenced us all. Enough, he said, his voice like thunder. Both of you. This isn't how we do things. Sarah, you should have told us about Emma. And Claire, you had no right to do this the way you did. We're a family. Damn it. We talk. We don't spit on each other. His voice broke on the last words, and I saw Mom reach for his hand, her eyes wet. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Tom spoke, his voice quiet but firm. Claire, we need to talk. Alone. Claire's face paled, but she nodded, her jaw tight. As they left the room, I felt the weight of the letter in my hands, the weight of my past, and something else, a spark of resolve. Claire had wanted to destroy me, but she'd made one mistake. She'd underestimated me. I wasn't going to let her win. Not like this. Tom and Claire's footsteps faded down the hall, leaving the dining room in a heavy, unnatural quiet. Mom's hand was still on Dad's, her knuckles white, her eyes fixed on the table like she was trying to piece together the wreckage of the night. I sat back down, the letter still in my hands, its edges digging into my palms. I wanted to tear it apart, to erase the words that had exposed me. But I knew it wouldn't change anything. The truth was out. And now I had to face it, not just the truth about Emma, but the truth about what Claire's attack meant for our family. Dad cleared his throat, breaking the silence. Sarah, he said, his voice softer now. Why didn't you trust us? It wasn't an accusation. Not exactly. But it hurt all the same. I looked at him, at the lines etched deep in his face, the weight of years spent holding our family together. I was afraid. I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Afraid you'd see me differently. Afraid you wouldn't love me anymore. Mom's breath hitched, and she reached for me again, her hand warm against mine. Oh, Sarah, she said, her voice thick with tears. We're your parents. We love you, no matter what. Her words were a lifeline, but they also stung, because I hadn't believed in them enough to tell the truth. I'd carried my guilt alone, letting it fester, letting it shape me into someone who hid from the people who mattered most. I know that now, I said, squeezing her hand. But back then, I was so ashamed. I thought if I could just be better, do better, it would make up for it. I didn't want you to know the worst of me. Dad shook his head, his eyes steady on mine. We all have a worst. Sarah, it's what you do with it that matters. His words were simple, but they hit me hard, like a door swinging open to a truth I'd been too afraid to face. The sound of raised voices drifted from the living room. Tom and Claire, their argument spilling through the walls. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was raw, jagged, like glass breaking. Mom glanced at Dad, her face tight with worry. They'll work it out, Dad said, but he didn't sound convinced. I wasn't either. Claire's attack on me wasn't just about the letter. It was about her place in this family, her need to prove something. And Tom, caught in the middle, was being forced to choose. I stood, my legs unsteady but my resolve growing. I need to know why she did this, I said, more to myself than to them. There's something she's not saying. Mom frowned, her hand tightening around mine. Sarah, let it go. You've been through enough tonight. But I shook my head. I can't. She didn't just want to hurt me. She wanted to destroy me. And I need to know why. Dad's eyes narrowed. But he didn't argue. Be careful, he said, his voice gruff but warm. You don't know what you're digging into. I nodded. But I was already moving, my feet carrying me toward the living room where Tom and Claire's voices were growing louder. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew I'd find it. Claire had opened this door, and I was going to walk through it. The living room was dimly lit, the lamps casting long shadows across the furniture. Tom and Claire stood near the fireplace, their bodies tense, their voices low but sharp. You should have told me, Tom was saying, his hands clenched at his sides. You don't get to decide what I know about my sister. Claire's face was flushed, her eyes bright with anger. I was protecting you, Tom. She's been lying to you. To all of us. Don't you see that? I stepped into the room, and they both froze, their eyes snapping to me. Protecting him from what? I asked, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. From me. From the truth. Or from something else. Claire's lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't answer. Tom looked between us, his face a mix of confusion and frustration. Sarah, what are you doing? He asked. I'm trying to understand, I said, taking a step closer. Claire, you didn't just find that letter by accident. You went looking for something to use against me. Why? What did I ever do to you? Her eyes flickered, just for a moment, and I knew I was close to something. You're delusional, she said, but her voice was too tight, too controlled. Am I? I pressed, taking another step. Or is there something you're afraid I'll find out? Something you're hiding? Tom's head snapped toward her, his eyes narrowing. Claire, what's she talking about? He asked, his voice low and dangerous. For the first time, I saw real fear in Claire's face, and it fueled me. I didn't know what I was chasing, but I was going to catch it. Tell him, I said, my voice rising. Tell him why you needed to tear me down. Tell him what you're so desperate to keep hidden. Claire's hands clenched, her nails digging into her palms. You don't know what you're talking about, she said, but her voice was shaking now, and I could see the cracks in her armor. Sarah, stop, Tom said, but there was no conviction in his voice. He was looking at Claire, really looking at her, like he was seeing something he hadn't before. And I realized then that this wasn't just my fight. It was his, too. Whatever Claire was hiding, it wasn't just about Mike, it was about him. About their marriage. About the life they'd built together. And I wasn't going to let her bury it. The living room felt like a pressure cooker, the air thick with the weight of unspoken truths. Claire's face was pale now, her earlier confidence crumbling under the scrutiny of Tom's gaze and my relentless questions. I could feel the tide turning, the power shifting from her to me. But it wasn't triumph I felt, it was a strange mix of fear and determination. I didn't know what I was about to uncover, but I knew it would change everything. Claire, Tom said, his voice low and steady. If there's something you're not telling me, now's the time. His words were calm, but there was an edge to them, a warning that made Claire's eyes widen. She opened her mouth, then closed it, her hands twisting together like she was trying to hold herself together. There's nothing, she said, but her voice was too high, too brittle. I didn't believe her, and neither did Tom. I took a step closer, my heart pounding, but my voice steady. You didn't just find that letter, Claire. You went looking for it. You wanted to hurt me, to make sure I'd never be part of this family again. Why? What are you so afraid of? Her eyes darted to Tom, then back to me, and I saw it again, that flicker of panic. She was hiding something, and I was going to find it. Sarah, stop it, she said, her voice rising. You're making this about me when it's about you. You're the one who lied, who betrayed your friend, who's been pretending to be someone you're not. But her words didn't have the same bite anymore. They were desperate, a last-ditch effort to deflect. Tom stepped between us, his face hard. No, Claire. Answer her. Why did you do this? For a moment, I thought she might break, might spill whatever it was she was holding back. But then her face hardened, and she straightened, her eyes cold. You want to know why? Because I'm tired of you all worshiping her. Sarah, the perfect sister, the perfect daughter. I'm the one who's here, day in and day out, dealing with your family's mess. And all you ever talk about is her. Tom flinched, and I felt a pang of guilt. I'd never meant to make Claire feel like an outsider, but I could see now how my bond with Tom had pushed her to the edges. Still, it didn't explain everything. It didn't explain the letter, the calculated cruelty of her attack. That's not enough, I said, my voice quiet but firm. There's more. I can see it in your face. Claire's lips trembled, and for a moment, I thought she might cry. But then she laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that sent a chill down my spine. You're so desperate to turn this around, aren't you? Fine. You want the truth. I'll give you the truth. She reached into her purse, pulling out a small, folded envelope. My heart stopped. Another letter. Another secret. She tossed it onto the coffee table, her eyes locked on mine. Go ahead, she said. Read it. See what else your perfect sister's been hiding. Tom reached for the envelope, but I grabbed it first, my hands shaking as I tore it open. The paper inside was newer, the handwriting unfamiliar. But as I read the first line, my stomach dropped. It was addressed to Claire, and it was from Emma. Dear Claire, I read aloud, my voice trembling. I don't know if you'll read this, but I need you to know the truth about Sarah. She wasn't just my friend, she was my sister. My half-sister. The words hit like a freight train, and I heard Mom gasp from the doorway. She and Dad had followed me, standing just outside the room, their faces pale. Tom's eyes were wide, his mouth open like he couldn't process what he'd heard. Keep reading, Claire said, her voice cold. I did, my voice shaking as the words spilled out. Emma wrote about our father, about an affair he'd had years before I was born, about a daughter he'd never acknowledged. Emma, my half-sister. She'd known, even back in college, but she'd never told me. She'd wanted to protect me, to build a relationship without the weight of that secret. But I'd betrayed her, and when she tried to confront me, I'd pushed her away, too ashamed to face the truth. The letter ended with a plea for Claire to forgive me, to help me heal, to bring our family together. But Claire hadn't done that. She'd used it to destroy me instead. I looked up, my eyes burning with tears. "You knew," I said, my voice breaking. "You knew she was my sister, and you still did this." Claire's face was unreadable, but her hands were shaking. "I didn't know at first," she said. "I found her letter after I found yours. I tracked her down, talked to her. She told me everything, how you ruined her life, how you didn't even know she was your sister. I thought if I showed you for who you really are, Tom would see it. He'd see that I'm the one who's loyal, who's always been there." Tom's face was ashen, his voice barely a whisper. "You talked to Emma, and you didn't tell me." Claire reached for him, but he pulled back, his eyes filled with a pain I'd never seen before. "I was trying to protect you," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't want you to know your sister was a liar, a betrayer." But I wasn't listening to her anymore. My mind was spinning, the pieces falling into place. Emma, my half-sister. The betrayal I'd carried all these years was even heavier now, layered with a truth I hadn't known. I'd hurt my own blood, and I hadn't even realized it. The guilt was crushing, but so was the anger at Claire, at myself, at the secrets that had torn us apart. I turned to Tom, my voice steady despite the tears. "I didn't know," I said. "I didn't know she was my sister. But I'm going to find her. I'm going to make this right." Claire laughed, but it was weak, hollow. "Good luck," she said. "She doesn't want you. She told me that herself." But I wasn't listening. I had a purpose now, a fire that Claire's cruelty had ignited. I was going to find Emma, and I was going to face the truth, no matter what it cost me. The revelation about Emma being my half-sister was a weight I couldn't shake, a truth that reshaped everything I thought I knew about myself, my family, and the mistakes I'd made. The living room was suffocating now, the air thick with betrayal, not just mine, but Claire's, and maybe even Dad's, who stood in the doorway, his face gray, his eyes avoiding mine. Mom's hand was on his arm, her expression a mix of shock and something deeper, something that told me she'd suspected something about Dad's past but had never dared to voice it. I clutched Emma's letter, its words searing into my mind. She'd known we were sisters, and I'd betrayed her without ever knowing the truth. The guilt was a living thing, clawing at my chest, but it was laced with a new resolve. I couldn't change the past, but I could face it. I could find her, make things right, or at least try. Claire's voice cut through my thoughts, sharp and desperate. "You think you can just go find her and play the hero? She hates you, Sarah. She told me she never wants to see you again." Her words were meant to wound, but they only fueled me. "Maybe she does," I said, meeting her gaze. "But that's between me and her, not you." Claire's face twisted, but before she could respond, Tom stepped forward, his voice low and raw. "Claire, stop. Just stop." He looked at me, his eyes filled with a pain that mirrored my own. "Sarah, is it true? About Emma?" I nodded, my throat tight. I didn't know. Tom. I swear. If I'd known she was my sister. My voice broke. And I couldn't finish. What would I have done differently? Would I have been braver? Less selfish? I didn't know. And that uncertainty was a knife in my gut. Tom's jaw clenched. And he turned to Claire. You talked to her. You knew she was Sarah's sister. And you didn't tell me. Why? Claire's hands flew up, her voice rising. Because it didn't matter. She's still the one who hurt her. Tom. Sister or not. Sarah's the reason Emma's life fell apart. I was trying to protect you from that. From her. But Tom wasn't listening. He shook his head. His eyes dark with something I couldn't name: anger. Betrayal. Maybe both. You don't get to decide what I need protecting from, he said. Not about my family. Dad finally spoke. His voice hoarse. Sarah. Tom. I didn't know about Emma. Not for sure. He looked at Mom. His eyes pleading. It was a long time ago. Before we were married. I made mistakes. But I didn't know I had another daughter. Mom's face crumpled. But she didn't pull away from him. Instead, she squeezed his hand. Her voice soft. We'll deal with that later. John. Right now. This is about Sarah. And Emma. I felt a surge of gratitude for her. For the way she was holding us together, even as everything fell apart. But I couldn't stay in that room any longer. Couldn't keep breathing the same air as Claire's venom. I need to find her, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos inside me. I need to talk to Emma. Claire laughed. A harsh, grating sound. Good luck. She's gone. Sarah. She doesn't want you in her life. But I wasn't listening to her anymore. I turned to Tom, my eyes pleading. Will you help me? He hesitated, his gaze flickering to Claire, then back to me. For a moment, I thought he'd say no, that he'd choose her over me, over the truth. But then he nodded, his jaw tight. Yeah, he said. I'll help you. Claire's face went white, her hands clenching into fists. Tom, you can't be serious. After everything she's done. But he didn't look at her. His eyes stayed on me. And I saw something there: trust. Maybe. Or the remnants of the bond we'd always shared. She's my sister, he said simply. And so is Emma. The words hit me harder than I expected. A reminder of the family I'd lost and the one I might still find. I didn't know where Emma was. Didn't know if she'd even talk to me. But I had to try. I turned to leave. But Claire's voice stopped me. You're making a mistake, she said, her tone icy. You think you can fix this? You can't. You'll only make it worse. I didn't turn around. Maybe, I said. But at least I'll try. I walked out of the living room, the letter still in my hand, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. Mom and Dad followed, their footsteps soft but steady. And I knew they were with me, even if they didn't fully understand. Outside, the night air was cold, sharp against my skin. I stood on the porch, staring at the dark street, trying to make sense of everything. Emma was my sister. The thought was both a wound and a lifeline, a truth I couldn't escape. I didn't know where to start, but I knew I couldn't stop. Not now. Tom joined me, his hands in his pockets, his face drawn. I'm sorry, he said, his voice quiet. I didn't know about any of this. Not about Emma. Not about Claire. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. We'll find her, he said, and I believed him. Because he was my brother. And despite everything, he was still on my side. As we stood there, the weight of the night pressing down on us, I realized something else. Claire's attack hadn't just exposed my past, it had exposed her, too. And whatever she was hiding, I was going to find it. Not for revenge. Not anymore. But for the truth. For Emma. For all of us. The next morning, the house was too quiet. Like it was holding its breath after the storm of last night. I sat at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee gone cold in my hands, staring at Emma's letter. The words blurred together, but one line kept echoing in my head. I wanted to tell you, Sarah, but I didn't know how. My half-sister, carrying that secret all those years. And I'd pushed her away, betrayed her without even knowing the depth of what I'd done. The guilt was a heavy stone in my chest, but it was starting to feel like something else. To a call to action, a chance to make things right. Tom walked in, his face shadowed with exhaustion, his eyes red like he hadn't slept. You okay? He asked, pouring himself a coffee. I shook my head. A small, honest gesture. Not really. You. He sighed, sitting across from me. Claire's gone to her sister's for a few days. Said she needed space. His voice was flat, but I could hear the hurt in it. The confusion. I wanted to say something comforting, but the words felt hollow. Instead, I slid Emma's letter across the table. We need to find her, I said. He nodded, picking up the letter, his eyes scanning the words. How do we even start? He asked. It was a good question. Emma had disappeared after college, her life unraveling because of me. I hadn't heard from her in over a decade. And Claire's words, she doesn't want you in her life, kept ringing in my ears. But I couldn't let that stop me. I'll start with what I know, I said. Her old email. Her social media. Maybe she's still in touch with someone from back then. Tom's jaw tightened, but he nodded. I'll help. Whatever it takes. His loyalty, even after everything, was a lifeline I didn't deserve but clung to anyway. We spent the morning digging through old contacts, searching online for any trace of Emma. It wasn't easy, her name was common, and the years had scattered our old college friends. But after hours of dead ends, I found a blog post from a journalism conference, dated 3 years ago. It mentioned an Emma Larson, a freelance writer based in Chicago. The name wasn't rare, but the coincidence felt too strong to ignore. She's in Chicago, I said, showing Tom the screen. His eyes lit up, a spark of hope cutting through the exhaustion. That's something, he said. You think it's her? I nodded, my heart racing. It has to be. She always wanted to be a writer. Even after everything. The thought of her rebuilding her life, chasing her dreams despite what I'd done, made my chest ache with pride and regret. I drafted an email, my fingers trembling as I typed. Dear Emma, I don't know if you'll read this, but I need to try. I know about us. About our father. I'm so sorry for what I did. For not knowing. For everything. I want to make this right. Please. Let me try. I showed it to Tom, and he nodded, his hand on my shoulder. Send it, he he said. I did. And then we waited. The silence of the house pressing down on us. Mom and Dad joined us later. Their faces drawn but resolute. Dad's confession about his affair hung between us. But Mom's quiet strength held us together. We'll find her, she said, her voice steady. She's family. The word hit me hard. A reminder of what I'd lost and what I was fighting for. But even as we planned, Claire's absence loomed large. Tom didn't talk about her, but I could see the weight of her betrayal in the way he moved. The way his eyes darkened when her name came up. That afternoon, I got a response. My heart stopped as I opened the email. Tom leaning over my shoulder. Sarah, I didn't expect to hear from you. I don't know if I'm ready to talk, but I'm willing to listen. I'm in Chicago. If you're serious, come here. We'll see. It was short, guarded, but it was something. I looked at Tom, tears in my eyes. She's willing to see me, I said, my voice breaking. He hugged me, a fierce, protective embrace that reminded me of when we were kids. We'll go together, he said. I nodded, grateful beyond words. But as we started planning the trip, I couldn't shake the feeling that Claire wasn't done with us. Her attack had been too calculated, too personal. She'd wanted to break me, but she'd also exposed herself, and I couldn't help but wonder what else she was hiding. That night, as I packed for Chicago, I found a small note slipped under my door. It was in Claire's handwriting. Short and sharp, you're not the only one with secrets. My blood ran cold. Was it a threat? A confession? I showed it to Tom, and his face darkened. She's playing games, he said, crumpling the note. Don't let her get to you. But it was too late. The note was a seed, planting doubt, fear, and a burning need to know what she meant. As we booked our flights, I made a silent vow. I was going to find Emma, to face my past and make amends. But I was also going to find out what Claire was hiding. Because if she thought she could tear my family apart and walk away, she was wrong. I wasn't the scared, selfish girl from college anymore. I was ready to fight for Emma, for my family, for myself. Chicago was a blur of gray skies and towering buildings. The kind of city that swallowed you whole if you weren't careful. Tom and I arrived in the early morning. Our bags light, but our hearts heavy with the weight of what lay ahead. Emma had agreed to meet us at a small coffee shop in Logan Square, a place she'd chosen for its neutrality. She'd said in her email. I could feel her hesitation in every word. The years of hurt I'd caused standing between us like a wall. But she'd agreed to see me, and that was enough to keep me moving forward, one shaky step at a time. The coffee shop was warm, filled with the hum of conversation and the smell of roasted beans. Tom squeezed my hand as we walked in, his presence a steady anchor in the storm of my nerves. We spotted her in the corner, her dark hair pulled back, her eyes fixed on a book she wasn't really reading. She looked older, of course, but there was something else, a quiet strength, a resilience that made my heart ache. This was Emma, my half-sister, the woman I'd hurt so deeply, and she was still here, still fighting. Emma, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked up, her eyes meeting mine, and for a moment, I thought she might bolt. But she stayed, her expression guarded but not hostile. Sarah, she said, nodding to the chairs across from her. Tom. We sat, the air between us thick with everything unsaid. Tom broke the silence, his voice gentle. Thank you for meeting us. I know this isn't easy. Emma's lips twitched. Not quite a smile. It's not, she said. But I figured it was time. Her eyes flicked to me, and I felt the weight of her gaze, heavy with years of pain. I took a deep breath, my hands trembling in my lap. Emma, I'm so sorry, I said, the words spilling out. I didn't know you were my sister. I didn't know a lot of things back then. But that's no excuse. I hurt you, and I've carried that every day since. She didn't respond right away, her fingers tracing the edge of her coffee cup. You did, she said finally, her voice steady but laced with hurt. You broke my trust. Sarah, you broke my life. I lost everything because of Yumi's degree. My career. My belief in people. Her words were a knife. But I didn't flinch. I deserve them. I know, I said. And I can't undo it. But I want to try to make it right. If you'll let me. Emma's eyes softened. Just a fraction. But it was enough to give me hope. I read your letter, she said. The one you never sent. Claire showed it to me when she tracked me down. It helped. A little. Knowing you felt guilty. That you didn't just walk away without caring. I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. I cared, I said. I still do. You're my sister, Emma. I want to know you, if you'll let me. She looked away, her jaw tight, and I could see the battle inside her wanting to trust, but too scarred to let go. It's not that simple, she said. You're not just some friend who screwed up. You're my sister, and you didn't even know it. That hurts in a way I can't explain. I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Tom reached for my hand, his grip steady, and I drew strength from it. I didn't know either, Tom said, his voice quiet but firm. About you. About our dad. But your family, Emma. And we want you to be part of us. If you're willing. Emma's eyes flicked to him, and I saw something shift a crack in the wall she'd built. I don't know if I'm ready for that, she said. But I'm here. That's a start. We talked for hours. The conversation slow and careful, like navigating a minefield. She told us about her life in Chicago, her work as a freelance writer, the way she'd rebuilt herself after I'd torn her down. I told her about my volunteering, my guilt, my hope for redemption. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a beginning. A fragile thread connecting us. As we left the coffee shop, Emma hugged me. A brief, hesitant embrace that felt like a miracle. I'll call you, she said, and I believed her. Tom and I walked back to our hotel, the weight of the day settling into our bones. But there was another weight. To Claire's note, still tucked in my pocket. You're not the only one with secrets. That night, I couldn't sleep, my mind racing with questions. What was Claire hiding? Why had she gone to such lengths to hurt me? I pulled out my laptop, searching her name, her social media, anything that might give me a clue. And then I found a photo from a year ago. Claire at a charity event, standing next to a man I didn't recognize. His arm was around her. Too close. Too familiar. The caption mentioned a business partner, but the way they looked at each other told a different story. I showed Tom the next morning. and his face went pale. "That's not what it looks like," he said, but his voice was uncertain. I didn't push him. Not yet. But I knew I was onto something. Claire had wanted to destroy me to protect her own secrets. And I was going to find out what they were. Not for revenge, but for the truth. For all of us. Back home, the air felt different. Charged with the aftermath of Chicago and the fragile hope of reconnecting with Emma. Tom and I hadn't spoken much on the flight back. Both of us lost in our thoughtsome with the weight of Emma's forgiveness. Him with the shadow of Claire's betrayal. That photo I'd found, the one of Claire and the man at the charity event, was a splinter in my mind. Sharp and persistent. I didn't want to believe she'd cheated on Tom. But the pieces were starting to fit her desperation to shift the focus to me. Her need to control the narrative. She wasn't just protecting her place in the family. She was protecting herself. Tom stayed at Mom and Dad's that night, avoiding the house he shared with Claire. I found him in the backyard, staring at the stars, a beer in his hand. "You okay?" I asked, sitting beside him on the old wooden bench. He shook his head. A small, tired gesture. "I don't know what to do. Sarah." I thought I knew her. His voice was raw, and I felt a pang of guilt for pushing him into this. But he deserved the truth, just as I did. "I'm going to find out what she's hiding," I said, my voice steady. Not to hurt her, but to understand. For you. He looked at me, his eyes searching mine. "Be careful," he said. "She's not going to let this go easily." I nodded, knowing he was right. Claire had already shown how far she'd go to protect her secrets, and I was stepping into dangerous territory. The next day, I started digging. I called a friend from college who worked in PR. Someone who knew the charity circuit Claire was part of. She confirmed the man in the photo was Daniel Harper, a wealthy donor with a reputation for getting too close to his business partners. They were tight for a while, my friend said. Lots of late-night meetings, if you know what I mean. My stomach churned, but I thanked her and kept going, tracking down Daniel's contact info through a mutual connection. I met him at a bar downtown. A sleek, upscale place that felt like Claire's world. Daniel was charming. All polished smiles and expensive cologne. But there was a sharpness to him. A predator's edge. "So, you're Claire's sister-in-law," he said, leaning back in his chair. "What do you want to know?" I didn't waste time. "Were you and Claire involved?" His smile faltered. Just for a second. But it was enough. "We worked together," he said carefully. She was ambitious. Wanted to make a name for herself. We got close. But it was business. "Business doesn't look like that," I said, sliding the photo across the table. He glanced at it, his jaw tightening. "You're fishing," he said, but his voice was too smooth, too practiced. I leaned forward, my heart pounding. "I'm not here to ruin her. I just want the truth. My brother deserves that." Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It was a mistake," he said finally. "A few months. Nothing serious." She ended it when she realized it could hurt Tom. The words hit me like a punch, but they also brought a strange relief. The truth was out, and now Tom could decide what to do with it. I thanked Daniel and left, my mind racing with what came next. When I told Tom, his face crumpled, but he didn't cry. He just nodded, his jaw tight, and said, I need to talk to her. Claire came back that night, her face pale but defiant. The confrontation was quiet, not the screaming match I'd expected. Tom showed her the photo, told her what I'd found, and she didn't deny it. It was a mistake, she said, echoing Daniel's words. I love you, Tom. I ended it because of you. But Tom shook his head, his voice steady but cold. You didn't just betray me. You tried to destroy my sister to cover it up. That's not love. She left the next day, her bags packed, her eyes red but unyielding. I didn't feel triumph, only a hollow sadness for what our family had lost. But there was hope, too. Emma started calling. Short, cautious conversations that grew longer each time. She came to Mom and Dad's for Christmas, her presence a quiet miracle, a chance to rebuild what I'd broken. I stood in the dining room where it all began. The table set for a new kind of family dinner, one with Emma. With truth. With the scars we all carried but chose to face together. Claire's absence was a shadow, but it was fading, replaced by the light of something stronger. I'd made mistakes, terrible ones, but I'd learned from them. I'd found my sister, my family, myself. And that was enough.